Doctor Who's latest mystery continued this week, the identity of the mysterious Mrs. Flood, this figure who has been stalking the 50th Doctor in his most recent adventures, having previously featured as Ruby Sunday's neighbour in Season 1. I've been covering all the latest developments in the Mrs. Flood mystery on the channel in previous videos, so go and watch those if you haven't already to get yourselves up to speed, in particular the one I did where I cover everything we know so far about Mrs. Flood from Season 1, all the theories, all the rumours, all her appearances. And today I'll be covering Mrs. Flood's latest appearance in The Well, asking what we can glean from it and whether it brings us any closer or not to working out who she is and what she's up to. So as with Lux, last week we had to wait until the very end of the episode to finally see Mrs. Flood in her latest guise, her latest cameo appearance. I did wonder beforehand just how she was going to fit into this story. It didn't seem like an obvious fit for her, this future set story, 500,000 years in the future with all these troopers, this squad, how is she going to be there on this remote planet and what's she going to have to do with this? And it turns out the answer to that question is that she was the person who all those troopers, that squad, was reporting to. She was the boss, to all intents and purposes, which we'll get onto in just a moment. But yes, the person they're answering to, we see her in the scene where Mo, I think it is, one of the surviving troopers, kind of does this field reports for her, reviewing the mission, telling her who died and who didn't and all that kind of stuff. There's that brilliant reveal where we hear Mrs. Flood's voice, first of all, and then we see her in this kind of futuristic uniform, red and black and silver trim there as well. Her hairdo as well, very prim and kind of futuristic, and this massive bank of computers behind her. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so different to what we've seen from her before. I mean, seeing her in the past last week was one thing, but seeing her in the future, like 500,000 years in the future, it's like, okay, she's really getting about. And of course, Mrs. Flood has some questions of her own for Mo about the Doctor and specifically the device that he was carrying. She shows this photo of the Vindicator in 50s Miami from last week, which she presumably took herself or sourced from somewhere, and is very pleased to hear that the Doctor is indeed carrying one and has it with him, presumably because she is going to be hijacking it from here on in, if she hasn't been doing it already, which was always a possibility, I suppose. But no, I think this is the point where she kind of realises the Doctor has the Vindicator, and it's like, okay, I can have some fun here. I can hijack it, alter the coordinates, send him to all these different places that he wasn't expecting or wanting to go to. He's trying to get to Earth. She can kind of put him off course and send him somewhere else. Something I have just noticed while actually making this video is that she refers to it as the Vindicator. The Vindicator is actually a word which the Doctor invented himself. He coined that term in Lux. The device is a vortex indicator. He nicknamed it the Vindicator. So is that a small sort of plot hole there? Who knows? But I suppose, yeah, they kind of have to refer to it by the same name all the time, otherwise it'll just get too confusing. The interesting thing here is that, like I say, Mrs. Flood is very much the big boss of this organisation, or at least this squad, this particular mission, which is something that actually Joe, who you might know from the channel, suggested in one of our previous videos together, our prediction video for Season 2. He said, is Mrs. Flood the boss, as in the boss that the Meep mentioned way back in the Star Beast at the beginning of the second RTD era. And at that point, the Meep noted that the boss is interested in very specialised, very unique creatures. The Meep said that the boss would be very interested to hear about another creature with two hearts, namely the Doctor. And that kind of plays into the other possible mention of the boss in this era so far, in Season 1, when Rogue mentions that he's got a new boss in his bounty hunter line of work. And that could just be a throwaway thing, a coincidence, but I'm inclined to think that it is intentional and deliberate, and that boss is the same person that the Meep was referring to. Now, we haven't heard about the boss by name since then, but the theory that Joe put forward was that, Mrs. Flood is the boss, and that she is perhaps in charge of this mission in the Well, which of course is what's ended up happening, and she's not referred to by name as the boss, but I think it's pretty clear, really. I'm kind of happy to accept now that yes, this is the boss, Mrs. Flood is the boss. We were promised answers, I think, about the boss by Season 2 in the Envision commentary for the Star Beast, Obviously, of course, as well, in Empire of Death, at the end of that story, we saw Mrs. Flood in this white fur coat, which many people speculated could be what remains of the Meep. You know, they speculated at the time, basically, that she is the boss, and she kind of killed the Meep because the Meep had failed to execute its mission, its plans to do whatever the Meep was doing in the Star Beast. And so, yeah, she turned the Meep into a fur coat and wore it as like a trophy almost. I think personally this is all enough evidence to suggest that Mrs. Flood is indeed the boss, and this is all one and the same, it's all connected. So what are the implications of that? What are the implications of Mrs. Flood being the boss, pulling the strings, being interested in all of these specialised creatures and hiring people to do her work, you know, be it the troopers in this story, be it Rogue as a bounty hunter, be it the Meep? Well, I think first of all, it's just very funny to think of Mrs. Flood, you know, this old woman, seemingly innocent old woman, being this kind of criminal mastermind, this criminal boss. It's a perfect fit in that regard. But to take it further, I think it clearly shows that she is more intelligent than she seems. It would very much fit with certain rumours and theories about her being a Time Lord, possibly the Master or the Rani or someone like that, you know. I mean, the Rani does experiments with the creatures and things, doesn't she? So that would fit, I think, particularly well. And the whole God of Stories theory is still very much a thing that has gained traction in fandom. This idea that Mrs. Flood is, you know, part of the Pantheon or like above the Pantheon or whatever. She's one of these godlike beings in charge of stories and narrative, and she's like a literal narrator. And yeah, I suppose that could still have some merit to it. But I think this suggests a different direction where she is like, yeah, like I say, this criminal mastermind boss, cold, calculating, you know, controlling events from behind the scenes, pulling the strings, but not in a kind of metaphorical godlike way, but where she's literally got these people working for her, carrying out her plans, you know, executing her aims. And regarding the whole specialised creatures thing, you know, the possibilities are endless there. Is she collecting these creatures to, you know, literally kind of steal all these physical features and attributes and characteristics and try to extract them? Is she trying to create some kind of super creature or super entity? Was she indeed interested in the Midnight Entity? Is that why, you know, this whole mission was set up in the first place? Could we see the culmination of that later on in the season, in the finale, where she's created this super being, you know, perhaps the bone creatures, the bone beasts, I think they're called, from the trailers and stuff. Perhaps that's what they are, this kind of ultimate form for her experiments and her creations. And it looks like Mrs. Flood is only going to be more involved in events going forward. You know, we've only really now got 2 or 3 stories left before the finale because of the length or not of the season. You know, if the Interstellar Song Contest is indeed a kind of a part 1 to the finale almost, or kind of leads into the finale, if that is indeed where we get the reveal about Mrs. Flood's identity, we've only really got 2 more weeks of cameos or whatever before that. So, yeah, you know, what role is she going to play? We know she's in Lucky Day next week. That has been confirmed. There were theories about her maybe having some sort of familial relationship to Conrad, this new character, Ruby's boyfriend, who's being set up. I won't say any more there in case I'm kind of stepping on spoiler territory, but yeah, that would be interesting to see. And with it being a Dr. Light story as well, it'll be interesting to see, you know, what role she plays there, because I don't suppose she's going to be following the Doctor in the same way that she has been thus far in the season. Will she actually crop up in the kind of the Ruby Sunday scenes, the bulk of the story? Will she actually still be Ruby's neighbour? That would be quite funny if she's living this kind of double life where, on the one hand, she's cropping up across time and space and tracking the Doctor and all that kind of stuff, and on the other, she's literally just still there pretending to be the nosy neighbour, you know, so Ruby is also kind of fooled. Lots and lots of food for thought there. I'm very much enjoying the whole Mrs. Flood thing. I've seen some people kind of say, oh, this is like a retread of the Susan Twist thing from last year, or it's difficult to be invested in it, but I completely disagree. I think it's great. Loving Anise Dobson and all her different cameo roles. But yes, what are your latest theories about Mrs. Flood? Who she is, what she's up to, what do you think the whole scene in the well kind of adds to the mystery as well? Whatever your thoughts, whatever your theories, please make them known down in the comments section below, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more coverage of the season, and in particular Mrs. Flood, going forward. But otherwise, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.